What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I'm going to be doing another quick video here. This is one I hadn't really planned on doing, but I had everything unlocked for the LW3, and I just wanted to show you guys some of the bullet velocity numbers and bullet drop numbers compared to the current long-range King sniper, which is the HDR. So I got some pretty interesting stuff to show, and I'm going to jump right into it. So in terms of what's really important for a long-range sniper, bullet drop, aiming stability, bullet velocity, and the optics are all really important. So you need to have good aiming stability because you don't want your gun to be swaying a bunch when you're aiming down sights. And obviously you can hold your breath, but when you scope in, if your gun has been swaying a lot and you're way off target, that can delay the shot and make it harder to hit the person. Bullet velocity obviously makes it easier to hit a moving target at range. Also, the more bullet velocity you have, the less bullet drop you have. And then bullet drop, clearly you want low bullet drop because you want to be able to just aim at the person's head rather than having to shoot over top of them and like estimate how far above them you need to aim. So this is kind of the build that I've settled on so far. So I'm going to go through the attachments that I measured. I didn't measure everything, but I measured bullet velocity, measured bullet drop, and the ADS time of this build compared to the HDR. And this gun's actually pretty competitive with the HDR. So first of all, the sound moderator, the first suppressor, it says it reduces bullet velocity, and I calculated that as at a 15% reduction in bullet velocity. The default bullet velocity for the LW3 is 663 milliseconds, or meters per second. So it's pretty slow without attachments, but you can actually get it pretty high with attachments. So this is sound moderator is a 15% reduction. Wrapped suppressor is basically the monolithic for the new Cold War guns. So the wrapped suppressor increased by 20%, so that's a pretty significant increase in bullet velocity. Then going over to the barrels, the first barrel, the 28.2 extended, says it increases bullet velocity. Let's see, that increased bullet velocity by 21%, so basically the same as the suppressor, a little bit more than the suppressor. The next barrel that increases bullet velocity is the Combat Recon, the 29.1. So this one increased by a ton. It increased it by 57%. So that plus the suppressor, bullet velocity numbers are multiplied. So when you multiply those two, you get a pretty high multiplier for both bullet velocity, 120% and 157%. That leads to a total bullet velocity when you equip this with the agency suppressor or the wrapped suppressor when it's a sniper rifle of 1249 meters per second, which is actually a little bit faster than the HDR. But there's more to the story than that, so I'll keep going over the build. You can put an optic if you want. This last attachment slot, you'll notice I only have 4 attachments on here. Last attachment slot's kind of, there's nothing really that's great to put in it right now. We need either another attachment that reduces ADS times, or we need something that helps with idle sway. The idle sway on the Cold War snipers is really, really bad, and there's like no attachments except I think a muzzle. Yeah, so there's muzzles that help with it, but obviously for the muzzle you need to use a suppressor when you're sniping from long range. So you can't really use those. So what we really need is another attachment like a tac laser. Tac laser would be perfect for this gun. If there was a tac laser for this gun, I do think it would be better than the HDR, but I'll get into that later in a little bit here. So 7-round mag, I picked this because it obviously gives you more rounds in your magazine. You could do fast mag. The reason I didn't go with one of these is because this gun already has pretty slow ADS time. With this build, the ADS time is 550 milliseconds, which is basically the same as the HDR. When you kit the HDR with tac laser, longest barrel, monolithic suppressor, variable zoom, and the ADS reducing stock. So I didn't really want to slow it down more because I wanted it to still be in the same realm as that HDR build. But you could, if you wanted, you could use the fast mag if you just want to reload faster rather than having a big mag. And if you don't care about ADS time, you could use any of these. As far as grip goes, I went with the jungle grip. I don't know the numbers behind how much these affect, but I am going to put up that attachment video later today, so hopefully I can cover that in that video. I'm not going to be able to do all the attachments for that video. It'll be crazy, but I will go through at least one of every one and just assume that across the board they work roughly the same. I'll test them all eventually, but just to start with, I'm going to do just one set of every attachment. But like I said, those are the 4 attachments. You really could put something else on there, but there's just nothing else that's really good. Like, you don't need aim walking movement speed. Sure, it's a plus, but like, it's not a big deal when you're sniping long range, and it makes, if you are strafing when you're ADS'd, it makes your reticle sway a lot, so it's not great. Sprint to fire time, don't need that for a sniper at all. Slide speed, don't need that. Sprint to fire time, again, don't need that. And this is another shooting move speed, aimed walking movement speed. And like I said, that's nice, but your reticle sways all over the place if you're strafing while shooting, so that's not really what you want to be doing anyway. And then the underbarrels all are mostly recoil and movement speed changing attachments, which, I mean, the recoil, I used some of these recoil attachments and didn't really notice any difference. The LW3 already doesn't have very much recoil. It just kind of wobbles around a little bit when you shoot, which is one of the things I really like about it, actually. Compared to the HDR, which kicks up a bunch, you can't really see what happened. The LW3 actually stays pretty well on target when you take a shot, so that's really nice. But so compared to the HDR, you get a little bit extra bullet velocity. Like I said, it's like 30 meters per second more bullet velocity than this long-range HDR build, but the HDR does actually have maybe like it's very, very close, like 5% less bullet drop, roughly. I tested this at 500 meters and it came out very, very similar, but it looked like the LW3 had a little bit more bullet drop. But I would argue that bullet velocity is more important than bullet drop, because bullet drop, you can, I mean, if it's only 5% more bullet drop, then you just aim a little bit higher, but it's much harder to predict someone's motion, and when you're predicting motion, you have to account for that bullet velocity, and the faster your bullet velocity, the less time they have to alter their path in between you shooting and the bullet reaching them. So I would argue that bullet velocity is actually more important than bullet drop, and being 5% different in bullet velocity, it's not going to be a big deal. But I think the HDR is probably still a little bit better, mostly because it's much more stable, because it has a tac laser. So it doesn't sway around when you're aimed down sights, but it does have a little bit less bullet velocity. So you can kind of balance those, and I think if we get some attachments for the LW3 that help with aiming stability, it'll be really nice. I forgot to mention when I was talking about the barrels, the Tiger Team barrel actually doesn't increase bullet velocity as much as the Combat Recon. So the Tiger Team only increased bullet velocity by 40% versus the Combat Recon's 57%. So it's probably not the ideal barrel. I'd use Combat Recon for long-range sniping, but it's still a good barrel. It's just not quite as good as Combat Recon. Alright, I just wanted to jump into a game here and show you guys some of the stuff I've been talking about. So first of all, this is the same build I showed for the HDR. So let's take a look at the idle sway. So if I just hold it right here, that's what the idle sway looks like on the HDR with the tac laser and the ADS stock. And then if I swap over to the Tundra, you can see it has much more idle sway, much quicker idle sway, and more magnitude of idle sway too. And that's what I'm saying, that I would love for one more attachment for the LW3 to help with idle sway and aiming stability. But right now we don't have that. Hopefully they'll add something for that in the future. And then I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but when you go prone, it actually helps with idle sway. So this is what the HDR looks like when you're prone. Crouching also helps, but prone helps more. So this is what prone looks like with the HDR. This is the Tundra prone. So it helps a lot with the Tundra. It doesn't seem like it helps that much with the HDR, but it definitely helps. And then I'm going to take some shots here at this building. Let's see how far it is. So this is this building here. So it's 1,300 meters away. So I'm going to aim at the very top edge, right between the red. Oh, got to kill this guy. There. Weird. All right, whatever. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. So this is 1,300 meters away. I'm gonna aim right at the top of the building there. Take a shot. Need to do that quicker. So prone, aim it right at the top of the building and see where this impacts on the building. So it hit right in the top of this third window down. So let's try it with the HDR now. Right on top of the third window down. Basically exactly the same spot. I think the HDR, like I said, is only like 5% different. 5% less. So it's super, super similar. Not a big deal. If you like the LW3, I think you can replace your HDR with it. But that is obviously up to you. Alright guys, well I hope you found this useful. I don't have all the stats for this gun yet, but I wanted to show you the most important ones. It does one-shot headshot at any distance, and it does have very, very fast bullet velocity, basically matches the HDR, a little bit faster than the HDR, and bullet drop basically matches the HDR, so it's a viable option. It has some interesting optics too. They're not great, but they're interesting. The default optic's probably the one I'm going to use, just so I have an extra attachment slot. And I don't like the continuously variable scopes, just because it makes it hard to, get the muscle memory for how far to lead someone and how high to aim above them for bullet drop, just because if your zoom's continuously variable, you have to somehow know exactly how far they are and basically lead based on that, versus when you just have set distances like 4x and 10x, then with that you can just practice a lot and get used to shooting a target that looks like he's that far, and get used to how much you have to lead them, how much you have to shoot over their head and stuff. So I will probably just stick with the default optic for now, but we'll see if the other optics ever get changed at all or anything. But for now, I'm just going to use the default optic. But yeah, the LW3 is a pretty good gun. I think it's viable to use in place of the HDR. I mentioned all the things that weren't great about it, but I do think it's a good gun. So give it a try, and I will see you guys all later.